Shalom Aleichem, Erev Tov. We are back in our, I think it's the 5th class of the Rambam's Laws of War. And the reason we're studying the Rambam's Laws of War is because right now Am Yisrael is in the middle of a war. And it's very important for us to understand what are the halachot of war while we are in a war. Now, we're not under any illusion that those that are in charge of making decisions for the Jewish people listen to the Rambam's Laws of War. But it's important for us as Jewish people who purport to follow halakha that we should understand at least that Jewish people have a code of law even when we fight wars. This next chapter is going to begin discussing actual warfare. What do we do during war? When we begin war, how do we engage in war? And so, give me a Rambam. You have a Rambam with you? Oh no? Okay. I'll bring you one. So, Rabbenu HaRambam tells us the following. En osin milchama im adam ba'olam. We do not wage war. Literally do war. We do not wage war against any human being on earth or forever. Ad shekor'in lo l'shalom. Until we first call out for peace. So until we offer peace, we are forbidden from waging war. It doesn't matter who. It doesn't matter when. It doesn't matter what the circumstances are. Says the Rambam, Echad milchemet hareshut, vechad milchemet mitzvah. Whether that's a milchemet reshut or a milchemet mitzvah. Do you remember in the beginning of chapter 5, we defined the legal categories of this? What is a milchemet mitzvah?
It's a mitzvah to go to this war.
For example, against who?
Against Amalek.
Amalek is a great example. What else? Who else? The 7 nations. Very good. Who else? Who else? Very good. Anyone who comes to kill the Jewish people now comes into the category of when the Jewish people need to defend themselves. So any defensive war is a milchemet mitzvah. It's a mitzvah to go to war. Milchemet hareshut means a war
to take over more land. Like if a king asked you to go, let's go take over that.
So why is it called milchemet reshut if the king tells us to go to war? Who does he have to ask permission from? From the Sanhedrin. So the king is not allowed to go to war until he first asks permission from the Sanhedrin, and then he's allowed to go to war. At that point in time, the milchemet hareshut has different laws than a milchemet mitzvah. And that's why the Rambam tells us for both. It doesn't matter if you're fighting Amalek. It doesn't matter if you're fighting to gain land. In all of those wars, you have an obligation to first offer peace. I don't want to get stuck today on the war with Amalek, and what would that mean by offering them peace? I will get stuck on it. So I promise you that I will stop and discuss with you the commandment of waging war against Amalek, which we already discussed a few classes ago. We discussed what is the definition of Amalek, who falls into the category of Amalek. But the part of, do we offer Amalek peace? That sounds counterintuitive, or at least counter to everything that we have learned in the Torah, seemingly. Wait, we'll get there. For right now, I wish to understand this halakha. Shneimar, like it says in the Torah, why not open the Torah? Michael, can I ask you to hand out some Beluch Humashim and to give me one first, please? Thank you. And I only asked to get one first so that I could tell you the page number. Thanks. Cheve, if you want to go take Beluch Humashim, you could take them too. We're on page 1038 in the Arshro Chumash. If you have a book of Devarim, we're in chapter 20, the book of Devarim. Moshe Rabbenu tells the Jewish people, Ki tetzeh lemilchama al oivecha, when you go to wage war against your enemies, וראית סוס ורכב עם רב ממך, and you see chariots and soldiers and just a greater number of people than you. Lo tira mehem, do not be afraid of them. Ki Adonai Elohecha imach, because HaKadosh Baruch Hu is with you. Hamalcha me'eretz Mitzrayim, the one who took you out of Egypt. Vaya kekoravchem, karovchem. What is the proper? I don't usually read from an art scroll. Chumash. Sorry, guys. Wonderful. And this book doesn't even have chapters. Great. Karovchen, right? Now, why the confusion? Because the Israeli Academy of Language insists that when you have two kamats together, the first kamat goes o, and the second kamat goes a. Do you know what I'm talking about? Look at that word. You see that word that I just read to you? Israelis would say kekoravchem, like they say tsoharaim or ohalim, tents. Israelis, they have this idea about Hebrew. And the Academy of the Hebrew Language insists that is correct. Ashkenazim, what do? Like Temanim, what do? All kamatz is an O. So then for them, it's all O. It doesn't matter. That's how they say kamatz. I'm not going to tell you that there are not some Sephardim like that too. Just I'm generalizing. Sephardim, when you have two, the second one becomes O. So we would say the plural of Ohel would not be Ohalim, but it would be Aholim. Yes? Like the afternoon would be Tzahoraim. And that's how we pronounce it in Tefillah. Only when we came to Israel did the police of the Academy of the Hebrew Language, and the Academy of the Hebrew Language polices Hebrew, even though they don't even have a Hebrew word for academy. Even though they don't know how to pronounce most of the letters in the Hebrew language. Even though, if you want a good critique on the Academy of the Hebrew Language, Chacham Fa'ur has in the end of Horizontal Society a nice appendix about them. I think it's literally titled the Police of the Hebrew Language, something like that. Yes. Vaya kekarovchem el hamilchama, when you begin to come close to war. V'nigash HaKohen v'diber el ha'am, and the Kohen will come and speak to the people. V'amar alehem, and he will tell them, Shema Yisrael, listen Israel, atem kirevim hayom lemilchama al oivechem, you are coming close to war against your enemies. Al yirach levavchem, do not allow your hearts to become weak. By the way, your hearts to become weak, meaning?
This is too much for us.
What does it mean?
You don't have the endurance or the confidence to fight war.
The courage to do what? To be afraid. To be afraid. But look, the next words say, Al tira'u v'al tachbezu v'al ta'arzu mipenehem. Don't be scared. Don't be frightened. What is Al yirach levavchem? I bring, if you listen to my shiur that I taught, called the one I gave in New York, Are We Any Different Than Them? Over there I quoted an Ibn Ezra, who shows Al yirach levavchem, don't be afraid even to kill. If you're too afraid to kill our enemies, you don't belong in the battlefield. If you are too afraid to die, you also don't belong in the battlefield. But two types of fear. The fear to be killed and the fear to kill. Ki Adonai Elohechem haolech imachem lilachem lachem im oivechem lo'oshia atchem. The God, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, who's going with you, to fight with you, to subdue your enemies. V'dibru hashotrim el ha'am lemor. Then the officers speak to the people and they say, Mi ha'ish asher bana bayit chadash v'lo chanacho yilech v'yashov leveto pen yamut b'milchama v'ish acher yichanechenu. It says, all of you who are afraid, maybe you built a new house, you didn't yet spend time there. You're afraid you're going to go to war and somebody else will live in your house. Today you don't have to go to war for that. Today you get married, and then your husband or your wife leaves you, and then somebody else moves in to live in the house that you worked 30 years to pay the mortgage for. You don't have to die. Sometimes it happens. Umi ha'ish asher nata kerem v'lo chilelo And what about a person who planted a vineyard? Again, ילך וישוב לביתו פן ימות מלחמה ואיש אחר יחללנו. ומי האיש אשר ארס אישה ולא לקחה? ילך וישוב לביתו פן ימות במלחמה ואיש אחר ייקחנה. Maybe one of you betrothed a woman and you didn't yet take her, then you're afraid somebody else will marry her afterwards. Go home. And they continue talking. I'm going to skip to the 10th pasuk. Ki tikra vel ir lehilachem aleha. When you come close to a city to wage war against it, v'karata eleha leshalom, you must call out to her in peace. So built into the laws of going to war is don't be afraid. If you have a reason to be afraid, go home. Because weak soldiers don't do good in war. They risk everybody else's lives. Soldiers are taught, by the way, anyone who's involved in the laws of self-defense, a momentary hesitation is where most people get killed. That's where they die. Once you've before you wage war, you deliberate all you want. Is it a good idea to go to war? Not a good idea to go to war? Is it the right thing strategically, not the right thing financially, economically for the country? Is it a good idea to be in war right now? All of those calculations before you go to war. Once you go to war, though, once we've declared war, there's no stopping. They're stopping only when we're done. And until then, you can't hesitate, you can't think twice, now you're at war. And you must call out, second law, to call out to the city in peace. V'haya im shalom ta'ancha. And if the city returns your peace, ufatecha lach, and she opens to you. V'haya kol ha'am hanimtza ba. It's very interesting that the word city in Hebrew is feminine. And the whole nation who is dwelling in her, yu lecha lamas ve'avaducha. They will be for you citizens that you can tax, and they will be subservient to you. This is a complicated topic, especially in the world today. Now you're gonna tax them, and you're gonna make them your slaves. It's important here. The word va'avaducha, as understood by our Chachamim, is not literally the taking of people as slaves. Rather, you cannot become a citizen of a Jewish country if you don't recognize Jewish sovereignty and the right to Jewish sovereignty. If you wish, they will serve you. Yeah, but wait till you see how the Rambam will write it. Yeah, the Rambam will say they accept avdut on themselves. Yeah, and so I'm preempting that next halakha, which we're going to read in chapter 6. That's what I'm preempting. Meaning, how can you possibly be a citizen of a country whose legitimacy you question? I mean, you don't have to be here. We gave you a chance to go. You want peace, meaning you want to stay here? How can you stay here and still pledge allegiance to a rebellion, to another country, to any other type of treason? You can't commit treason in a country. By the way, in the modern state of Israel, only the Arab Knesset members are exempt from pledging allegiance to the state of Israel. It's considered a violation of their democratic rights. How can you demand that I, a member of Israeli parliament, has to be loyal to the Israeli government? Now, if that sounds crazy to you, of course it's crazy. It's why Israeli Knesset members will use their diplomatic immunity to support terrorist causes, because they can't be tried for it, not as treason, and not because they have diplomatic immunity. Because we, the Jewish people, have to be more democratic than any other democratic nation on earth. So much so, even when it will kill us. By the way, you want to Google the only Knesset member in history who lost his diplomatic immunity? You can start jumping down that rabbit hole. V'im lo tashlim imach. And if the city chooses not to make peace with you, v'aseta imecha milchama, and therefore she chooses to wage war against you, v'tzarta aleha, and now what do? You besiege her. Untana Adonai Elohecha biyadecha, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu will surely give her into your hands. V'hikita et kol zechura lefi charev, and you will kill all of her males with a sword. Rak hanashim v'hataf, only the women and the children. V'habehema, the animals. V'chol asher yeh ba'ir, and all who are in the city. Kol shelalat tavoz lach, so you won't kill the women, the children, and the animals, but now they are able to be taken by the Jewish army. By the way, why women, children, and animals are spared?
Those children never got a chance to do anything.
Close.
They're innocent.
Wow, they're innocent, meaning
That they're not allowed to go to work.
I mean, no.
And they can't fight us.
Okay, where's your kippah? Okay, so come here to the camera. Take a chance. Avinam, I want them to see you. Avinam, here. Bo. This is my son Avinam. You've seen Elchanan in the videos before. Yes?
Yeah.
Avinam, what did you say? The reason why the children and the women and the animals, they're innocent because
They never fought, and they won't have a chance to fight because they're not allowed to, and they're harmless.
this is Saba's grandkid. Elchanan, who's Saba's favorite commentator in the Torah? Don Yitzchak Abar Banin. He writes on this pasuk. He says that the reason that these people are exempt are because they don't go to war. It's not the way of women to go to war and children to go to war. Animals for sure don't go to war, and therefore those.
Greeks took them.
So maybe the horses that go to war get killed, right? Or the elephants that go to war, but the ones that are sitting in the farm, the bunny rabbits, the cages, they don't go to war, and therefore, by the way, it could be. I'm not going to tell you what the Torah means, but it could be that if the women are going to war, of course that would be part of who would kill. But in the classic case, it's why women are exempt, for example, from hearing the reading of Parashat Elchanan. Amalek. Why? Why women don't have to hear? Because women don't go to war. Because women don't go to war, they don't have to hear the mitzvah of wiping out Amalek. They're not obligated in that.
Yeah.
What happens if a woman goes to war? What if you're an Israeli soldier and you're a woman? Yeah, one second. What's that? You're answering the question? Chacham Mordechai Eliyahu, he says that if a woman goes to war, she has to hear Amalek. Our parents disagreed with him. And nonetheless, Chachamim said otherwise, but maybe it's a good thing. Avinam, thank you. Go. Yes, Naomi.
I think last week you were talking that although women don't go to battle, they do go to the war effort. So how does that interact whether here Amalek or
Very good. Still, the mitzvah is not to go to a war effort against Amalek. The mitzvah is to kill Amalek. So being that women don't actively kill Amalek, they're not obligated to hear the reading of Amalek. But that's a good, it's a good point, and that's probably, if you wanted to say, women are careful if they can to hear Amalek, but the obligation is not there. So now, what does he say in the Torah? כן תעשה לכל הערים הרחוקות ממך מאוד, אשר לא מערי הגויים אלה, הנה רק מערי הימים אלה, אשר אדוני אלוהיך נותן לך נחלה. לא תחיה כל נשמה, כי אחריהם תחרימם החיתי, והאמורי, הכנעני, והפריזי, החיבי, והיבוסי. All of these nations, you should destroy them. כאשר ציווך אדוני אלוהיך, like הקדוש ברוך הוא commanded you. Who's missing from the list? I have here, החיתי, האמורי, הכנעני, הפריזי, החיבי, היבוסי. Who's missing? הגרגשי. Where's the Girgashi?
one of these nations?
Yeah, so how come he doesn't list them in the Torah?
I think there's some maybe.
So there seems to be a rabbinic tradition that the Girgashi, they ran away. They fled. למען אשר ילמדו אתכם לעשות ככל תועבותם, אשר עשו לאלוהיהם, וחטאתם לאדוני אלוהיכם. Why can't you leave these nations in the land of Israel? Because they will teach you to act in their evil ways, and they will cause you to sin. And they will cause you to sin. Here's something very interesting. So what happens if somebody from the 7 nations converts to Judaism? Not only you can't hurt them, what's the concern with leaving 7 nations in Eretz Yisrael?
They're going to rebel.
They will teach you their avodah zarah. But if they're Jewish, they won't. So from here you see that calling out to peace automatically includes joining Am Yisrael in some capacity. Once the fear of causing us to serve avodah zarah is not there, then there's no reason for me to be concerned with your presence in Eretz Yisrael anyways. But I'm getting ahead of myself. You read this Pisukim? The Rambam is only codifying these Pesukim into law. That's what we're doing together back in the Mishnah Torah. Maybe keep a Chumash close. We might have to open it again. But for right now, Rabbenu HaRambam continues. That's what it means in Devarim. Ki tikra ve'ir lilachem aleha ve'karata aleha leshano. Im hishlimu. Now what happens if they make peace with us? V'kibelu sheva mitzvot shnitztavu b'nei Noach alehen. And they accept upon themselves the 7 mitzvot of Noach on themselves. En horgin mehem neshama. We don't kill from them at all. Varehem lamas. And now they are given to us as citizens to tax. By the way, are you taxable citizens? Do you pay part of your paycheck to the government? Does that make you a slave? Does it make you an inferior citizen to the country? No, it means if you stay here, then you have to be part of this country. You can't stay here. Sometimes I see people writing in Israel, oh, if you do this, we're going to leave. Leave. Nobody's keeping you here. It's okay. And so here, Lamas, that's what it says, like it says in the Torah, they will pay for you taxes, and they will be citizens who respect the sovereignty of the Jewish people over this land. Let's talk about Bnei Noach, because that's what I want to talk about today. I want to talk about Bnei Noach today. And in order to talk about Bnei Noach, I'll talk about the Bnei Noach now. Why not? What's holding us back from talking about Bnei Noach? In order to learn about Bnei Noach, you have to stay in the same book, but you want to go to chapter 9. Okay? Does anyone know what the 7 mitzvot of Noach are?
No bloodshed, no stealing. We had a test at school about these. I know all of them. No stealing, no bloodshed, no what's it called? No gilur, no setting up laws. You must set up laws. You're not allowed. Wait, how many did I say?
4.
Wait, I know this. No cursing, Belkat Hashem, and the ripping of women. No
Ripping of-
from a live animal. No, I know this. No, I remember. Don't be
Yeah, we did that. Don't be an idol worshiper. Avodah Zarah. Avodah Zarah. Those are the 7. Okay?
But that doesn't actually mean idol worshiper. It just means worshiping Hashem wrong.
Very good. Let's read together. That's what happens when you grew up in Shiviti. You don't know any better. You don't have time to learn the wrong way first. So, here's what it says, the Rambam in the 9th chapter. Al Shisha Devarim Nitztava Adam HaRishon. Adam HaRishon was commanded 6 things. 6. Al Avodah Zarah. He was commanded not to worship idols. Or, as we explained before, Avodah Zarah Chanan means foreign worship, against the worship of HaKadosh Baruch Hu in a way that is not allowed. Meaning, you can worship HaKadosh Baruch Hu through Orthodox Judaism, but if it's not warranted by the Torah, then it's Avodah Zarah. Yes? Because there are many things that Jews do, even under the guise of orthodoxy, that are contrary to that which HaKadosh Baruch Hu told us. People ask me, are you Orthodox? I can't possibly answer the question, yes. Because I'm not. Because I only follow HaKadosh Baruch Hu and the HaShamayim. So I don't have a way to answer that question aside from, what did it say? Ivri Anochi? What did it say? Ivri? Elohe? Ani? Very good. I'm a Hebrew, and I fear the God of the heavens. That's what I can answer. More than that, I can't answer. You had a question?
What about the different religions in Israel right now?
Oh, other religions. Let's leave that for the next year because we didn't get that far yet. Okay. Now, al avodah zarah. So we have a prohibition avodah zarah. Ve'al birkat Hashem, and they're forbidden from blessing Hashem. What does it mean? It's a prohibition to bless Hashem. Goyim are not allowed to bless Hashem. There are many things our Chachamim say that they don't mean what they say. For example, whenever Chachamim want to curse the Jewish people, they say, if the haters of Israel do this, then this should happen to them. Meaning, instead of saying the Israel, it says the haters of Israel. Chachamim are careful. So you even say a Shabbat. What do they call the Shabbat morning Kiddush? It's called Kiddush HaRabbah, the Grand Kiddush. It's one sentence. So how did it get the title Grand Kiddush? Yeah, Chachamim had a good sense of humor. That's how you do that. So here, it's called Lashon Sagenaho. It's a nice language. Our Chachamim don't want to say curse Hashem. They say Birkat Hashem. They're forbidden from blessing Hashem, meaning Goyim are forbidden from cursing HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Are Jews forbidden from cursing HaKadosh Baruch Hu? Yes. So this is the same thing, though there are differences between most of the laws of Noach as Goyim observe them and the laws of Israel as the Jews observe them. V'al shefichut damim, and on murder, spilling of blood. You notice the prohibition here is al shefichut damim, on spilling blood. According to the laws of Noach, there is no room for subtlety in the laws of spilling blood. In halakha, we have the difference between killing, murder, ending a life, A, B, C, D. There's different definitions here. Because of that, if Chacham rules, and I don't teach these halachot in public, but if Chacham rules that a woman needs to go through an abortion, the preference will be to go to a doctor who is Jewish and not to a doctor who is not Jewish. Because the laws of Noach are much less sophisticated than the laws of Israel. And whereas a doctor who is Jewish is able, in certain situations, to end a life, but in this category, it's any spilling of blood. It is very clear to me that the conversation you hear around this topic in the non-Jewish community around us is so lacking nuance because of this. In the origins of this law, there is no nuance. Simply, it's just a life is a life, or choice is a choice, and nothing else matters. That conversation is so juvenile that it's an embarrassing thing sometimes to listen, even to, especially when the Jews get involved in this debate. And you sometimes wonder, are you Roman Catholic or are you Jewish? I have to figure out which part you're a part of. And unfortunately, we have Jews on both sides of that spectrum. Both of them fail to recognize the beautiful nuance that exists in the text of our Chachamim. But I took a tangent. Yeah. I don't want to tell you that. I just tell you, no. See, a self-defense would be the case in which spilling blood might be warranted. Yeah? But that's going to be a much more severe, something severe needs to happen for the ability to spill blood. And if you want to read about the 7 mitzvot of Noach in depth, there's a whole section. In fact, if you really want to get, I have at home a Shulchan Aruch for Bnei Noach. It's a Shulchan Aruch of the 7 mitzvot of Noach. It's put out by, I never actually read all of it, but it's put out by Ask Noah International, presented by the United Noahide Academies. If I had to guess, there is some kind of Chabad situation going on here, because Chabadniks have a really deep interest in the 7 mitzvot of Noach, and beyond the scope of my conversation. But there is even, it has the Haskama of Rabbi Zalman, Nechemia Goldberg, and some Chachamim, interesting Chachamim, and some notes from them also. But, I have some interesting pieces in my library.
For sure.
If it's meant for non-Jews, why is it that a lot of non-Jews not know about it?
That's because a lot of Jews don't know. I mean, how could the Jews teach people things that they don't know about? Yeah, for sure. And so this chapter of the Rambam, chapter 9, if you want to read through it in Sefaria, in English, it has more of the details of these laws. I'm just saying them briefly. Al Gilu Arayot, on forbidden sexual relationships. Al Hagazel, stealing. Val Hadinin, and there's an obligation for non-Jews to set up a legal system which ensures justice in society. Afalpi, shekulan kabbalah hen biyadenu Moshe Rabbenu. Even though we received all of these in Kabbalah from Moshe Rabbenu. What does the word Kabbalah mean here? Because it doesn't mean what you think it means.
We received the law from Moshe.
Received the law from Moshe Rabbenu, but not from the Torah. These 7 laws of Noach are not written explicitly in the Torah anywhere. We receive from Moshe Rabbenu a tradition that there are laws that the Bnei Noach need to observe. V'hadat nota lehen, and they are logical, meaning you can reach these conclusions that these are things that should be prohibited for all people, not just for Jewish people. Miklal divrei haTorah yira'eh shal elu nitztavu. It's possible, if you analyze the verses of the Torah properly, that you can find these prohibitions also, but we don't claim that they have biblical origin, rather that they have origin from Moshe Rabbenu that he gave us for the nations of the world. Hosif leNoach ever min hachai. Some say evar. Ever min hachai. They added for Noach the prohibition. HaKadosh Baruch Hu told him he's also forbidden from eating the limb of a living animal. I think there's a scene in one of those movies, the 10 Commandments, where he has a camel and he hacks off the leg of the camel to eat it while the camel's still alive. Mamash ever min hachai. That's literally what's forbidden to do.
The only reason it comes by us because Adam never ate meat.
Very good. Shneimar, ach basar benafsho damo lo tochelu. You cannot eat the animal while it still has a life force in it. It's forbidden to eat the animal.
So if you were allowed to eat a lizard, its tail would fall off and the tail is still alive.
Oh, that's a great question about the halachot of the tail of a lizard.
Is it still flapping?
Because the lizard is still alive. Nimtzeu sheva mitzvot. So you have 7 mitzvot, meaning 6 that were given to Adam HaRishon, and 1 that was given to Noach. V'chen haya hadavar b'chol ha'olam. And this is how it was in the whole world. Ad Avraham nitztava yater al elu b'milah. Avraham Avinu was commanded another mitzvah, and that was the mitzvah of Brit Milah. V'hu hitpalel shacharit, and he prayed shacharit. By the way, Avraham Avinu did a Brit Milah for who? For himself, for his son Yitzchak, and for Yishmael. Yes? You want to see an interesting halakha? Just keep your finger here. Look a little further. Look a little further. I prepared from a different book this year, so one second. The Rabbenu HaRambam tells us that the next chapter, look here. Go to the next chapter, chapter 10, halakha 8, chet. So flip a little bit to chapter Yud, halakha chet. Looks for Zayin. Hamila, Brit Milah, nitztava ba'Avraham v'zaro bidvad. Only the Jews, Avraham and his descendants, were obligated in them. Shneimar ata v'zaracha acharecha ledorotam. You and your descendants afterwards until the end of time. Yatza zaro shel Yishmael shneimar ki b'Yitzchak yikareh lecha zara. And that comes to exclude Yishmael. Why? Because it says only with Yitzchak will you have seed, and that says that Avraham and his seed have to have milah, and therefore Yishmael is included. V'yatza Esav shari Yitzchak amar leYaakov v'iten echad birkat Avraham lecha uzaracha. So what do you see? That Yitzchak is the only one obligated in milah, right? But not Yishmael and not Esav. Why? מכלל שהוא לבדו זרעו של אברהם המחזיק בדתו ודרכו הישרה והן המחויבים במילה. Only those offspring of Abraham who continued in his footsteps and followed in his belief of God are obligated in milah. That's the Jewish people. But look at the next halakha. Amru chachamim. Our rabbis told us, Shebnei Keturah, the children of Keturah, Shehem Zar'o Shel Avraham Shebao Achar Yishmael v'Yitzchak. They're the children of Avraham that came after Yishmael and Yitzchak. Chayavin b'milah. They're obligated in Brit Milah because they're also descendants of Avraham. V'ho'il v'nit'arvu hayom b'nei Yishmael b'vnei Keturah. And because today the Yishmaelim and the children of Keturah intermingled with each other, yitchayvu hakol b'milah b'shemini. All of them are obligated in having a Brit Milah on the 8th day Ve'neheragin aleha, and they certainly don't get killed for it. What do you see here from this halakha? That the Ishmaelim today, who are mixed together with Ketuah, according to our Chachamim, they understood that they have an obligation for a Brit Milah. According to their laws, but you see that Ishmael gets Milah at 13. But you see something fascinating. And it's a halachic discussion for another time about our Mohalim having an obligation perhaps to do Milah for Ishmaelim. Because they're descendants of Abraham who need Milah, even though Ishmael proper doesn't get Milah, but because they're mixed in with the children of Keturah, so here you find another nation on earth that is commanded in Milah on the 8th day. Something they don't tell you about in Hebrew school. Let's go back to where we were at.
Muslim community in Denver.
Oh, very good. I know a Mohel who I can't say on camera. We'll leave it like that. Yes. V'chen haya davar. So Avraham Avinu was commanded on Milah and Shacharit. V'Yitzchak hifrish maaser. Yitzchak Avinu, he took off maaser. V'hosif tefillah acheret lifnot hayom, and he added another tefillah towards the end of the day. Yes, called. Very good. V'Yaakov hosif gid hanasheh. Yaakov added the prohibition of gid hanasheh, meaning he was commanded not to eat the sciatica nerve inside of the animal. Remember the story with the angel that until the day. So we have that halakha. V'itpalel arvit, and he prayed arvit. Uv'mitzrayim nitztava Amram b'mitzvot yeterot. And in Egypt, Amram was given other mitzvot. For example, or shall I leave it for you as an extra credit? Ad sheba Moshe Rabbenu v'nishlema Torah al yado. Until Moshe Rabbenu came and he filled in the rest of the Torah. So mitzvot came to us staggered. Adam HaRishon got 6. Noach got 1. That made the 7 mitzvot of the children of Noach have to keep. The Jewish people through Avraham got another, Yitzhak another, Yaakov another, Amram another. Amram is the father of Moshe Rabbenu. Yeah. Until Moshe Rabbenu came and he gave us the whole Torah. Something very important. I know when you go to other classes, they have more exciting topics, like what is the mystical meaning behind the third letter of the Aleph Bet when you look at it upside down. I know, you sometimes go to Shiurim and they have some very deep Shiurim. Here we're just learning basic things, like we're learning a little bit of Torah, we're learning a little bit of Halakha. I understand that for some people that might not be. What I'm about to tell you right now is something very, very important. It's so important that I would argue that most people don't understand it. Let's read together, if I can, from the Rambam's commentary on the Mishnah. Actually, I can't read it together because you don't have it. The Rambam's commentary on the Mishnah in Tractate Chulin, chapter 7, Mishnah Vav, 6. Rabbenu HaRambam says, V'sim libcha l'klal hagadol hazeh. Listen very carefully to this fundamental principle. שאתה צריך לדעת, you must know, שכל מה שאנו נזהרים ממנו, that anything that we avoid as of a prohibition of the Torah, או עושים אותו היום, or anything that we do today as a mitzvah, אין אנו עושים זאת, אלא מפני ציווי אדוני על ידי משה. We only do it because HaKadosh Baruch Hu commanded it to Moshe Rabbenu. לא מפני שאדוני ציווה בכך לנביאים שקדמוהו, and not because HaKadosh Baruch Hu commanded some prophet beforehand. Meaning, דוגמה לכך, an example. אין אנו אוכלים עבר מן החי, לא מפני שאדוני אסר על בני נוח עבר מן החי. We don't eat the limb of a living animal. Not because the children of Noach were prohibited from HaKadosh Baruch Hu not to eat the limb of a living animal, אלא מפני שמשה אסר עלינו עבר מן החי, במה שנצטווה בסיני, שישאר עבר מן החי אסור. At Har Sinai, Moshe Rabbenu was told, hey, Ever Minachai, it's still prohibited. I'm not changing it. Meaning, we didn't upgrade the law to let Ever Minachai now be sold at your local grocery store. Because of that, you're not allowed to eat Ever Minachai. Meaning the difference is that we no longer refrain from eating the limb of a living animal because of Noach. Rather, we don't do it because of Moshe Rabbenu, because of our Torah. on Har Sinai. וכן אין אנו מלים מפני שאברהם מל את עצמו ואת בני ביתו. When we do a Brit Milah, it would be incorrect to say, I'm doing a Brit Milah like Avraham Avinu did a Brit Milah. No, you don't. You're Jewish. You do a Brit Milah, mipnei she'Adonai tziva l'idei Moshe lihimol. Because HaKadosh Baruch Hu told Moshe that we do a Brit Milah. Kemo shemal Avraham alav shalom. Just like Avraham Avinu did it, of blessed memory. Do you understand here the important part? We, as a Jewish people, we don't do things through personal, private connections that prophets had with the creator of the universe at moments in time. Everything that we do is connected to the revelation of HaKadosh Baruch Hu on Har Sinai to the entire Jewish people. When we begin to understand how profound the berit that we did with HaKadosh Baruch Hu on Har Sinai, you recognize there's no chance in the world that we will do anything because some person had a personal experience that told us we should do A, B, C, D. That's why no matter how many Pesukim you will twist to us from Isaiah or from any other book, we don't care about the guy who they say was born yesterday. Not because we did this or that or the next thing. I don't care about anybody who's not part of the berit of the Jewish people at Mount Sinai. Not even, forgive me, l'havdil, 1,000 differences, not even Avraham Avinu. I don't do mitzvot because Avraham Avinu did a mitzvah. I do mitzvot because HaKadosh Baruch Hu told Moshe Rabbenu, and we heard in front of the whole Jewish people. My covenant is directly with HaKadosh Baruch Hu through the Torah and Har Sinai. And this, if you go back to other classes that I spoke to you about the Berit, the Rambam tells you, what did he call it? Klal Gadol. It's an underlying fundamental principle to everything that we do. There is nothing that we do because someone told somebody came to them in a dream, somebody heard A, B, C, D. Never. Never. Avraham, he did Brit Milah because HaKadosh Baruch Hu spoke to him privately. We do Brit Milah because HaKadosh Baruch Hu spoke to Moshe Rabbenu publicly. And we were part of that covenant, a bilateral covenant that we entered into consensually, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu entered into consensually, and we both have responsibilities and obligations towards each other. And this berit at Har Sinai is the source and the reason of everything that we do. Yeah.
Just have a quick question. Can you clarify the other peoples that were commanded to do?
The children of Keturah. You want to look them up? She's one of the wives of Avraham Avinu. Is a son of Hagar, right? And we said Esav, who is the son of?
Rivka.
Yeah, who's his father? Yitzchak. So even though those are descendants of Avraham, but they're not the descendants of Avraham in a legal sense.
We see Keturah and Hagar as being separate.
Some people, there is a rabbinic tradition that Keturah and Hagar are the same person. Even according to that rabbinic tradition, even according to that, you don't want to say they're different people. Even according to that, but Yishmael was specifically excluded from being considered the zera of Avraham Avinu. So that's an important note to mention. Now, Chazara, right? So, and at that point in time, it's referring to Yishmael. And so, if you want to jump down some other places where Keturah may be mentioned, we could do it at a different time. But for right now, I thought that was a very interesting halakha. B'ezrat Hashem, we are not, there's no class tomorrow because tonight's Tuesday. But
What you're describing here with great clarity doesn't seem to be what observant Jews do today.
which part?
Well, my particular Rebbe said that this is how we do this.
Because he had a vision on the road to Jericho. And that because many things, unfortunately, by the way, a person is entitled to their own visions. Meaning, some person says they had an encounter with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I'm not going to argue with you. But I'm also not going to do anything you heard there because I didn't hear it. Yes? But you're right. Unfortunately, the Jewish people are very divorced from what does it mean to be part of a covenant with HaKadosh Baruch Hu in the first place. And that's why it's crucial for us to be having this conversation now. And it's crucial to us when we go to war. Our expectations from our enemies also has to be the fact that we are all in some type of connection with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and their expectations for our enemies also. I'm just debating whether, I think next week's shiur, we're going to talk about this concept of mas and avdut. What is the taxation? What does it mean to be part of society? What does it mean to not be, to be in a servitude, a capacity of understanding Jewish sovereignty over a certain country? And what does that actually look like practically on the day-to-day life? I think that B'ezrat Hashem, all of that will be part of a shiur next week, on Monday, God willing. But for right now, I wanted you to understand with clarity the beginning, which is, remember this rule, that before we go to war, we discussed last time not to be scared, not to be afraid. But this time the mitzvah is that on top of all of that, is also that before we go to war, we call our enemies to peace. I do see Israel still maintain a semblance of this. Sometimes people get very upset at this whole Israel's dropping leaflets. They're telling them where they're going to bomb ahead of time. They're busy calling people, telling them, get out of that building. We're going to blow it up. Why does Israel do such stupid things? I'm not telling you that's the right way to wage a war. I'm not telling you. I'm telling you that part of this could be a deep-seated tradition in the Jewish people, that we try as much as possible before we go to war. And we're talking about even war. I'm making it very clear. According to the Rambam, even the war against Amalek, even the war against the 7 nations, there has to be a way out. It can't be that the only option for a person in front of us is death. That's not the Jewish approach. There must be, for some people it might be to flee. For other nations it might be to join the Jewish people. So it would be an obligation to convert to the Jewish people. Now you might consider that crazy. Why would you convert your enemy? It would be like handing out American citizenship in another country you're waging war against. When you decide to wage war, you also take on yourself the responsibility for the people who you are fighting against. I know that for some petty people that doesn't make any sense. They don't understand it. For the life of them, why am I responsible for my enemy? It's not I'm responsible for my enemy, I have to make him breakfast in bed in the morning. It's I chose to wage a war. It could even be a defensive war, meaning they started it, but now I've engaged with them. Part of my engagement in war means that I'm responsible for someone else. For example, I don't know who made the international laws of war. I don't even know who follows them. But the international laws of war, it's a violation to capture a prisoner of war and then, let's say, abandon them somewhere. Once you take a prisoner of war, according to the law at least, you are obligated to take care of their well-being, their welfare, their food, their water, their protection. You took away their weapons. Now you're responsible for their safety. Now, that's a recognition that even when I take an enemy into my custody, I'm responsible for their welfare. Am Yisrael has been doing this for a very long time. And you can imagine that in biblical times, when the Jewish people are waging war against other nations, bloodthirsty barbarians, and we come to them and say, we're calling you to peace. We're offering you citizenship. It's 24 hours. After that, our offer expires. You can imagine, one, that we were met with derision in many places. It was considered a weakness on our side. But you can also imagine what a noble people we looked like, marching through deserts and marching through crazy places, through crazy people who were the most analphabetic of societies in the world. They knew how to rip people's hearts out of their chests with their hands. That's what they were good at. And Am Yisrael is offering them a way out. You can imagine that the Kiddush Hashem, the sanctification of God's name that the Jewish people carried onto the battlefield, it's also the way that we wage war. I know Jews always like to talk about peace. We usually try to do peace. But even in the way we wage war, what do you say? There is a God who is in the midst of your camp at war. Of course, HaKadosh Baruch Hu's presence is there. But also the nobility of a Jewish people who are at war, and in no moment do they forget that they are part of the people of Israel who are representing the creator of the universe and the world. And that's something that every soldier carries on their back. And you should know that in this are all the halachot, even how a soldier goes to the bathroom, like you might remember from reading the Torah. Vaya machanecha kadosh, your camp must be holy. If you wish for the divine presence to rest on you, you can't be a savage like other people are savages. There are rules, fruit trees. Crazy, what are you busy worrying about the people's orange trees? Because we're not fighting as arrogant, egotistical maniacs in the world. We're fighting as emissaries of the creator of the universe on this earth. The responsibility is on the shoulder of the Jewish people when they wage war is something tremendous. And I only pray and I hope and I bless our current soldiers. I'm certain that our soldiers understand the severity. But those who are pulling their strings and those who are making decisions for them, I only pray that they recognize how pivotal of a period in Jewish history this is, and that they recognize that also they need to make themselves utensils for the divine presence that must rest on them, so they make the proper decisions, the correct decisions, on how to properly wage war as a Jewish nation. B'ezrat Hashem, we'll continue learning together next week.